Howdy, I'm Darren Hibbs with the 10-Week Bible, and I wanted to share just a brief thought with you from Genesis chapter 40. You know, a lot of times in life, we can feel like our life is aimlessly meandering and a lot of the talents and abilities we have are squandered. We may find ourselves in a job where we're not appreciated or in a place where we've ended up because of no fault of our own. You know, many people, in fact, most people throughout human history have lived under repressive and oppressive governments and regimes. Right now on planet Earth, a large percentage of the human population is living in a situation they have no real way out of that they didn't cause themselves. And so when we feel that we've ended up somewhere and our talents and abilities are being squandered through no fault of our own, we're in good company with Joseph. Let's read this in Genesis chapter 40, starting in verse 12 right now. This is what it means, Joseph said to him. Now Joseph is speaking to Pharaoh's cupbearer who had been put in prison and was in prison with Joseph for some period of time. And he had a dream this night and he looked bad and sad, and so Joseph asked him what the problem was, and the cupbearer said, I have a dream, but I don't know what it means. And so Joseph says, tell me, and I'll tell you what it means. So the cupbearer tells him the dream, and now Joseph is going to explain it to him. Continuing on, the 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. How often do we feel that way? Maybe that's true for you. Maybe you are somewhere right now because of a false accusation. I mean, Joseph's life has gone from bad to worse, and even still the Lord continues to bless him and continues to bless the works of his hands. I mean, he was sold into slavery because his brothers were jealous of him and hated him. But the Lord blessed him in Potiphar's house. And then Potiphar's wife lied. I mean, just an outright lie, and he ends up in prison because of a lie. And now he's here, and the Lord has blessed Joseph so much that even though he's a prisoner, the warden in charge of the prison puts Joseph in charge of everything. So he's actually in charge of these 2 guys. They're his inmates, even though he's an inmate himself. So they tell him this story, and Joseph gives him the interpretation of the dream, and Joseph sees his opportunity. He's like, this is my way out. This cupbearer, he's going to go stand before Pharaoh. And if you'll just tell Pharaoh, I'm sure he's thinking, if you'll just tell him about this guy that interpreted your dream and told you exactly what was going to happen before it happened, Pharaoh will be intrigued and will get me out of prison and something will go well for me. Joseph sees this as his opportunity. But it wasn't his time. It wasn't the time that the Lord had for him. A lot of times there's a lot of messages out there that we can fill our minds with that tell us that if you just try harder and work harder and do all the right things, then good things will come to you. And as a proverb, that's mostly true. A proverb is something that's mostly true most of the time. If you work harder, try harder, do more, you'll eventually land something. Something will work, something will happen. Most of the time. Jesus didn't promise us that. He didn't promise us that we would always have more wealth, more health, more prosperity, more fame, more all of those good things. He loves to give us those good things. He really does. But sometimes his plan has us in a dungeon. And it's the Lord that had Joseph in this dungeon. He wants out desperately, like any of us would. But he didn't see what was coming. Now, sometimes we find ourselves in those kinds of situations, and even though our situation may not be as bad as what some people on earth experience right now or what Joseph experienced, the emotions of experiencing this may feel just as bad. We don't get to compare how bad we feel, how rotten we feel to someone else, because we can't feel what they feel. We can only feel what we feel. So whatever you're going through right now, it may feel to you like you imagine Joseph felt. But take courage, take heart. The Lord loves you. You may be in that place because the Lord put you there. You may not be. Ask him to let you out. Do whatever you can to get out of that dungeon. Joseph saw this as his opportunity, but it wasn't his time. The Lord had a specific moment in human history to release Joseph out of the prison into the seat of the greatest power and wealth in human history. That may not be our story, but the Lord can and will do things like that through us. But above everything else, be like Joseph. Stay faithful to where the Lord has you, and stay faithful to him. You can ask the Lord anytime, let me out of this prison, let me out of this dungeon. But don't ever lose sight of what's most important. We have an eternity to gain by following Jesus. Don't ever push that aside. Follow him. Love him with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, even if you find yourself in Joseph's dungeon. I'm Darren Hibbs with the 10-Week Bible. Thanks for watching. If you are encouraged by this, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. If you want to, click the subscribe button and click the little bell icon to be notified when new videos come out. And if you're just finding this for the first time, I do a daily podcast over on iTunes and every other place where you can find a podcast where we're going through this material a little bit more in depth. I encourage you, commit to reading God's Word. Be fascinated by his Word. Give yourself to his Word and be fascinated by it and by him, and it will change your life forever. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.